In this vast and boundless existence, each of us carries within our consciousness a repository of the past memories, both joyful and sorrowful, triumphs and failures, happiness and suffering. Some experiences we cherish, holding them close to our hearts like precious jewels. Others, we wish to forget, wounds that cut deep, like sharp blades piercing our souls, causing us pain each time they resurface in our minds. There are those who live in perpetual regret, lamenting the mistakes they have made, the opportunities they have missed, the pain they have inflicted or endured. Some are trapped in resentment, blaming the injustices of life, those who have hurt them, or the circumstances that have thrust them into unbearable suffering. Others turn their frustration inward, drowning in self-reproach and sorrow, convinced that they were never good enough, never strong enough to change what has already passed. But let us ask ourselves, do these things truly exist in this present moment? When we reflect upon them, we see that these events have already come and gone, like water that has flowed to the vast ocean, like clouds drifting across the sky, like a dream that vanishes with the break of dawn. They are nothing more than shadows in our minds, a series of recollections recorded and replayed by our thoughts. And yet, we allow these shadows to control our lives, to wound us repeatedly, to bind us in an endless cycle of sorrow and suffering. Buddhism teaches us that everything in this world is impermanent, nothing lasts forever, nothing remains unchanged. The past is no exception. It no longer exists in this present reality. Yet, because we cling to it, because we refuse to release these memories, they continue to afflict us. We suffer not because of what has happened, but because we refuse to let it go. Moreover, the Buddha taught the doctrine of non-self, Anatta, that the self we identify with is, in truth, nothing more than a continuous flow of conditions and causes. There is no permanent, unchanging entity we can call I or me. The self of the past, the self that experienced pain, mistakes, happiness, or success, is merely a manifestation of causes and conditions. If we continue to cling to the shadows of the past, believing them to be who we are, in effect, imprisoning ourselves within an illusion, forging our own chains of suffering. So how do we let go of the past? How do we free ourselves from its haunting grip? How do we live a life of lightness and serenity? Letting go does not mean denying what has happened, nor does it mean forgetting in a careless or indifferent way. Letting go means learning to see the past with wisdom and compassion, allowing it to be a lesson rather than a prison. This journey is not an easy one. Yet, if we cultivate right understanding and apply the proper methods, we can gradually transform our suffering, freeing our minds and embracing the present moment fully. This is the path that we will explore together, the profound teachings of the Buddha, the wisdom that has helped countless beings liberate themselves from suffering and rediscover true peace and happiness. Let us embark on this journey of letting go, so that we may dwell in peace, here and now. The past is like a shadow that clings to us, making it difficult to escape the memories, the suffering, or the mistakes we have made. Humans have a natural tendency to reflect on what has happened, whether it was joyful or painful. However, in most cases, it is the unpleasant memories, the regrets, and the suffering that haunt us the most. The human mind is like fertile soil, where the seeds of the past can sprout and grow vigorously, especially when we lack the awareness to recognize that all of it is merely the echoes of our consciousness, no longer a part of our present reality. Think about the times you have recalled an old event, a mistake, or a wound. Even though it happened long ago, all it takes is a reminder, a familiar image, a spoken word, or even just a fleeting feeling, and suddenly, everything resurfaces as if it just happened yesterday. The pain may return with full force, or the regret may consume your focus, preventing you from fully engaging in the present moment. This tendency often leads to distress, anxiety, and even impacts both mental and physical health. Clinging to the past is like trying to grasp flowing water between your fingers. We know that the past cannot be changed, yet we still hold on, hoping that somehow, things could have turned out differently. This is one of the fundamental reasons why people struggle to let go. Because our minds grasp onto what has already passed, we are unable to live fully in the present. Like an unshakable shadow, the past seems to have the power to haunt and control us, turning us into prisoners of our own memories. But in reality, we are the ones who give the past that power. If we come to see that all of it is nothing but fleeting illusions of the mind, that everything has already passed and no longer truly exists, then we can gradually release our attachment and rediscover a sense of inner peace. There are many emotions that prevent people from letting go of the past. Each of these emotions stems from attachment, and if we do not understand their true nature, we will remain trapped in an endless cycle of suffering. Regret is one of the most common emotions that keep people bound to the past. We often ask ourselves, if only I had done things differently, maybe everything would have turned out better. Regret leads us to constantly blame ourselves, endlessly replaying scenarios of what could have been. However, according to the teachings of the Buddha, everything in this world operates according to the law of cause and effect. What has happened in the past was the result of a complex web of conditions that came together at that time, and no matter how much we regret it, we cannot go back and change those conditions. If we continue to dwell in regret, we will never be able to fully embrace the present moment, but instead, we will remain stuck in self-recrimination over what has already passed. The Buddha teaches that instead of regretting, we should learn to accept and extract wisdom from our past experiences. When we view the past through the lens of wisdom, we no longer allow it to imprison us, but rather, we see it as a lesson and essential part of our spiritual journey and growth. Another powerful and persistent emotion is resentment. When we are hurt, betrayed, or treated unjustly, we often hold on to our resentment. We believe that what others have done is unforgivable, and we convince ourselves that if we were to let go, it would mean allowing the wrongdoer to win. But in reality, holding on to resentment does not hurt anyone except ourselves. When we cling to hatred, we imprison ourselves in negative emotions, burdening our hearts with pain. The Buddha once said, "Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned first." When we truly understand this, we realize that forgiveness is not about excusing the wrongdoing of others, but about freeing ourselves from the chains of hatred. Beyond resentment toward others, many people are trapped in the cycle of self-blame. They believe they are the cause of past mistakes, losses, and suffering. They continuously torment themselves, placing all the blame on their own shoulders, and begin to feel unworthy of happiness. But the Buddha teaches that everything arises due to causes and conditions. Even if we have made mistakes, what truly matters is our ability to recognize them, learn from them, and make positive changes. If we remain stuck in self-blame, we will be unable to move forward, forever entangled in the shadow of our past. At the root of all this suffering is the attachment to self, ego. When we identify ourselves with what has happened, we unknowingly create a self that is bound by the past. In truth, the self that we believe to be permanent is nothing more than a temporary combination of interdependent elements: our body, emotions, thoughts, and perceptions. These elements are constantly changing, nothing remains fixed. However, because we do not fully understand this, we continue to cling to past experiences and define ourselves through them. For example, someone who has been betrayed in love may carry that wound for a lifetime, believing they are a victim, convinced they can never trust again. Someone who has failed in their career may label themselves a failure, afraid to take risks again. These patterns persist because we attach the past to our sense of self, believing that these experiences define who we are. But if we recognize that everything is impermanent, that past experiences are merely a part of the continuous unfolding of life, then we will no longer hold on to them so tightly. The Buddha teaches that through the contemplation of non-self, Anatta, we come to see that there is no fixed, unchanging I. The past is simply a collection of causes and conditions. We do not have to carry it with us forever. When we learn to let go of this attachment to a false sense of self, we truly become free. Therefore, if we wish to let go of the past, we must first understand its nature. We must recognize that everything is but a projection of the mind, that nothing lasts forever, and that we do not need to imprison ourselves in old memories. When we grasp this truth, we can finally live fully in the present, with a heart that is light and at peace. Impermanence is one of the fundamental principles in Buddhist teachings. It is an undeniable truth, yet few people are willing to recognize it deeply. When speaking of impermanence, we often associate it with change, decay, and loss. However, few truly understand that impermanence is not merely a natural law, it is also a profound lesson for awakening. It teaches us how to let go and live peacefully amidst the ever-changing currents of life. Everything in this universe is in a constant state of transformation. The human body is born, grows, ages, and eventually perishes. Trees sprout, flourish, and wither away. Day follows night, seasons come and go, nothing remains still forever. Even our emotions shift from moment to moment. Sometimes we are joyful, sometimes sorrowful, sometimes filled with love, and other times overcome with anger. What we once believed to be permanent is nothing more than fleeting waves upon the endless river of time. Yet, because people fail to recognize or refuse to accept impermanence, they suffer. They wish to hold on to beauty, to cling to what they cherish, but the nature of all phenomena is beyond personal control. Not understanding impermanence leads to attachment, desire, and grasping at things that cannot last forever. When we love someone, we hope that love will never change. But one day, that person may leave, or our own feelings may no longer be the same. When we have a stable job, we expect it to last indefinitely, yet circumstances may shift, causing us to lose that job, or we ourselves may no longer wish to continue. When we own a beautiful home and enjoy a comfortable life, we want it to remain unchanged, but eventually, the house may deteriorate, and our wealth may diminish. Impermanence is not something to be feared. It is our misunderstanding of it that brings suffering. The Buddha taught that once we realize the impermanent nature of all things, we will no longer cling to external possessions, nor be attached to what was never truly ours to begin with. When we understand impermanence, we will appreciate what we have without becoming bound by it. We can love without attachment, enjoy without indulgence, and contribute without expecting outcomes to align with our desires. Consider this: can you touch yesterday? Can you return to the past to undo a mistake or relive a beautiful moment? No matter how much we regret or long for what was, the past remains only as a memory, it is no longer real. Yet, people often live in the past more than in the present. They either dwell in nostalgia, mourning what has been lost, or suffer from the pain and mistakes of bygone days. One who understands impermanence is one who learns to let go of the past. This does not mean forgetting what has happened, but rather no longer allowing it to bind them. They may remember cherished moments, but without clinging or sorrow. They may reflect on past mistakes, but without self-recrimination or guilt. Instead, they learn from the past, growing wiser, without allowing it to weigh down their present. There is a story in Buddhist teachings. One day, the Buddha and his disciples were traveling when they came across a man weeping by the riverbank. The Buddha asked, "Why are you crying?" The man replied, "Master, I am in deep sorrow because my most beloved one has passed away. I cannot bear this pain." The Buddha looked at him and asked, "Can you bring that person back to life?" The man remained silent. The Buddha continued, "If you cannot, then why do you torment yourself?" This story does not imply that we should not grieve for the loss of a loved one, but rather that if we remain trapped in past sorrow, we will never be able to move forward. Understanding impermanence does not mean becoming indifferent, it means accepting reality, treasuring what remains, and living meaningfully in the present moment. When we focus on the present, the past loses its hold over us. We are no longer shackled by old memories, nor bound by regret. The present is all we truly have. It is the space in which we can create change, cultivate goodness, and bring happiness to ourselves and others. If we truly understand that one day, everything we have will inevitably be lost, we will cherish our present blessings even more. We will love our family with greater depth, speak kind words instead of harboring resentment, and engage in meaningful acts rather than letting time slip away in vain. Impermanence teaches us how to live a life of true significance. Knowing that time waits for no one, we will not delay the things that truly matter. We will not wait until something is gone to appreciate it, nor realize what is valuable only when it is too late. Impermanence also helps us release our burdens, because we know that even suffering will pass. If we are in pain today, we must remember that this feeling is not eternal. If we face difficulties, we must trust that change is inevitable. Nothing endures forever, and that itself is a great comfort for those who are struggling. The Buddha taught that one who understands impermanence is no longer ruled by circumstances. They can endure loss without falling into despair, embrace change without fear, and remain at peace even in a world full of uncertainty. They know that everything shall pass, so they do not grasp, do not panic, and do not become attached. Thus, if we seek inner peace, we must first learn to understand and accept impermanence. Let us live fully in each moment, love and appreciate what we have, but without clinging. Let us keep our hearts open, ready to embrace change without fear, to see life with awakened eyes, and to walk the path of liberation with a serene and liberated mind. Non-self, Anatta, is one of the three essential marks of existence in Buddhist teachings, alongside impermanence, Anicca, and suffering, Dukkha. To understand non-self is the first step toward freeing ourselves from self-imposed limitations, letting go of attachments to the past, and attaining liberation of the mind. However, deeply internalizing the concept of non-self is not an easy task, for human beings are conditioned to perceive the world through the lens of the self, clinging to the past as if it were an inseparable part of their identity. What we call I today is not the same as the I of yesterday or the I of last year. If we examine deeply, we will see that both our body and mind are constantly changing. As a child, we had a small and delicate body, an innocent and untainted mind. As we grew older, our physical form changed, and so did our thoughts and perceptions. When we reach old age, our body weakens, and our awareness is no longer the same. So which I is the real one? Is it the I of our youth, the I of adulthood, or the I of old age? Looking within, we also see that our emotions and thoughts are not fixed. There are times when we feel joy, and times when we experience sorrow. There are moments of anger, and moments of love. If there were truly a permanent self, why would it change so often? In our younger years, we may have been ambitious, pursuing wealth and fame. But as time passes, those desires may lose their significance. Today, we may love someone deeply, but an unexpected event could cause that love to fade. If that self were an unchanging entity, we would remain the same forever, holding on to the same thoughts and emotions. But in reality, everything within us shifts from moment to moment. The Buddha taught that human existence is merely a combination of the 5 aggregates, skandhas: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These elements are in a constant state of flux, and there is no fixed entity called self within them. Because of ignorance, we mistakenly believe in a real I, and from that illusion, we become attached to the past, treating it as an inseparable part of who we are. This attachment to the past is the root of much suffering. We cling to memories, to wounds, to experiences, as if they define us. Someone who has been betrayed may carry that pain indefinitely, afraid to open their heart again. Someone who has failed in the past may remain trapped in self-doubt, unable to move forward. Someone who was once wealthy but has lost everything may live in endless regret, unable to accept their present reality. But if we truly understand non-self, we will see that all past events are merely temporary phenomena, lacking any fixed essence. We are not what has happened to us. We are not our pain, nor our losses. These experiences are nothing more than fleeting moments in the endless flow of life. Imagine the mind as a river. The water in that river is constantly flowing, never remaining the same. A drop of water that passes today will never return. Our consciousness functions in the same way, changing from moment to moment. If we cling to one particular phase of the river, we are only imprisoning ourselves. But if we understand that the river is always moving, we will no longer suffer over what has passed. A person who understands non-self will not be bound by the past. They do not forget it, but they do not identify with it. They may reflect on past mistakes and hardships, but they do not allow those experiences to hinder their journey. They recognize that the past is merely a chapter in their story, not the final destination. Past experiences can serve as lessons for growth rather than chains that shackle the soul. A person who has made mistakes can use those mistakes as wisdom to avoid repeating them. A person who has suffered can use that suffering to develop greater compassion and appreciation for the present moment. There is an old story that illustrates this truth. One day, 2 monks were traveling together and came across a river. There, they found a woman who had lost her way and could not cross on her own. One of the monks lifted her onto his back and carried her across the river. After setting her down, they continued their journey. However, the other monk seemed displeased. After walking for a long time, he finally spoke up, "Brother, do you not realize that as monks, we are not supposed to touch women?" The first monk smiled and replied, "I set her down by the river long ago, but it seems you are still carrying her." This story teaches us a profound lesson. There are things that have already passed, yet if we continue to carry them in our hearts, we are only creating our own suffering. If the second monk had truly understood non-self, he would have realized that past actions do not define the present moment. His mind would not have been burdened by such a trivial event. Likewise, if we continue to cling to the past, we only weigh ourselves down. When we recognize that there is no unchanging I, we no longer attach ourselves to past events. We no longer see the past as an inseparable part of ourselves. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means looking at everything with a serene heart, free from attachment. Learn to see all experiences like the wind passing through. Some winds are cool and refreshing, others are harsh and cold, but they all come and go. Let the past drift away with the current of time so that our souls may be light and at peace. The Buddha once taught, "Do not chase after the past, do not seek the future. Reside only in the present moment. When we truly understand non-self, we will no longer allow the past to define us. We will no longer be bound by what has been, but instead, we will live fully in the present. Non-self is not an abstract doctrine but a path to true liberation. When we no longer grasp onto the self, when we no longer see the past as who we are, we will find genuine peace. From there, we will learn to live with true freedom, unshackled by the chains of the mind, unburdened by the sorrows of yesterday, and unhindered in our journey forward. Mindfulness is one of the essential practices that help individuals transform their minds and free themselves from the afflictions caused by the past. When the mind is entangled in memories, one easily sinks into suffering, regret, anger, or blame. However, by living with mindfulness, one can observe every arising thought without being carried away by it. As a result, one can let go of attachments, clearly see the impermanent and selfless nature of all phenomena, and thereby attain inner peace. Mindfulness is not merely a theory or an abstract concept, it is a practice that allows one to awaken in every moment of life. When practicing mindfulness, one can clearly perceive what is happening in the mind without being dominated by it. One understands that all thoughts arise and cease, and nothing is permanent. Recognizing this, one is no longer dragged down by past memories, nor bound by old emotions. The human mind is like a lake. When the water is clear and still, one can see everything reflected on its surface. But when the water is disturbed, it becomes murky, and nothing can be seen clearly. The mind is the same. When caught in negative thoughts, one loses the ability to see reality as it truly is. For example, when recalling a past mistake, if one lacks mindfulness, it is easy to be swept away by self-reproach and regret. But with mindfulness, one can observe the thought objectively, recognizing that it is just a passing mental formation, not one's true self. With this awareness, one no longer allows the past to dictate the present. Mindfulness is not about forcibly eliminating negative thoughts but about recognizing them with clarity. When a thought arises, one can observe it with equanimity, like someone standing on a riverbank watching the water flow. When one does not identify with the thought, it loses its power to cause suffering. Meditation is a method that helps cultivate mindfulness deeply. When the mind becomes still in meditation, one can see the impermanent and selfless nature of all phenomena. Thoughts come and go, emotions arise and fade. One realizes that nothing truly belongs to oneself. One meditation technique that aids in releasing the past is contemplating impermanence. When practicing this meditation, one reflects on the ever-changing nature of all things. What once seemed important in the past may now have lost its meaning. The pain that once felt unbearable may now be nothing more than a faint memory. Understanding this, one can gently let go of what has passed. The meditation on selflessness, Anatta, also helps free one from being bound by old memories. Through deep contemplation, one realizes that the self one clings to is merely a combination of body and mind, without any fixed entity. If there is no permanent self, then to whom do past memories belong? To whom does past suffering belong? When one truly understands selflessness, the past is no longer an inseparable part of oneself, making it easier to release. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the foundations of mindfulness, the Buddha taught that when practicing mindfulness meditation, one must see things as they truly are. When a thought or emotion arises, one simply notes, this is a thought, this is an emotion. There is no need to judge or try to change it. When one observes without attachment, all thoughts and emotions naturally come and go, leaving no trace in the mind. Not everyone has the time to spend hours meditating, but mindfulness can be practiced in daily life. Mindfulness is not confined to the meditation cushion but can be applied to every moment of existence. One of the simplest methods is the practice of mindful breathing. By focusing on the breath, one anchors awareness in the present moment. Whenever a thought about the past arises, one gently returns attention to the breath. Gradually, the mind becomes less entangled in old memories. Mindfulness also helps one recognize emotions with greater clarity. When a negative emotion arises, instead of reacting immediately, one can pause, take a deep breath, and observe it. When one can identify an emotion with wisdom, it no longer has the power to overwhelm. For instance, when feeling sorrow over a past event, instead of being dominated by sadness, one can ask, where does this feeling come from? Does it truly belong to me? Is it permanent? By looking deeply into the emotion, one sees that it is merely a mental state, not one's true essence. In daily life, mindfulness can be practiced through simple actions. When eating, one focuses on each bite, savoring the taste, instead of letting the mind drift to the past or future. When walking, one pays attention to each step, feeling the contact between the feet and the ground. When working, one devotes full attention to the task at hand, rather than being distracted by unnecessary thoughts. Each moment of mindfulness in daily life contributes to transforming the mind, making it clearer and more peaceful. Mindfulness does not erase the past but allows one to see it with wisdom, no longer being bound by it. The Buddha once taught, see reality as it is, neither adding nor subtracting. When one lives with mindfulness, one realizes that the past is like clouds drifting across the sky. When one no longer clings to those clouds, the sky of the mind becomes vast and clear. Through the practice of mindfulness, one can gradually release what has passed and live with greater freedom and ease. Transforming the mind is not something distant or abstract, it is a practice in each moment. By applying mindfulness in daily life, one discovers peace in the present moment, no longer bound by the past, no longer allowing old memories to obscure the light of awareness. Forgiveness is one of the noblest acts a person can practice on the spiritual path. It is not merely about letting go of the wounds inflicted by others, but more importantly, it is an inner liberation, freeing ourselves from the chains of the past so we can live peacefully in the present. Many people mistakenly believe that forgiveness is a sign of weakness or submission, but in truth, forgiveness is a manifestation of a strong heart, an open mind, and profound wisdom. Forgiving does not mean condoning wrongdoing, nor does it mean forgetting what has happened. Forgiveness is simply a way of not carrying the burden of resentment any longer, of not allowing anger and bitterness to consume us. When we cling to anger and suffering, we are the ones who suffer the most. Those who have hurt us may no longer think about us, may have long forgotten what they did, yet if we continue to harbor resentment, we are only imprisoning ourselves in darkness. In the Buddha's teachings, hatred can never extinguish hatred. The Buddha taught, hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. It is appeased by love. This is an eternal truth. This means that if we continue to cling to hatred, we only deepen our suffering. However, if we look at things through the lens of compassion, we will see that those who have hurt us are also trapped in ignorance, bound by their own suffering. When we truly understand this, we will no longer see them as enemies but as beings lost in the ocean of suffering, just as we once were. Forgiveness does not mean that we must maintain relationships with those who have harmed us. There are relationships we need to let go of in order to protect ourselves. But even if we no longer interact with someone, we can still forgive them in our hearts so that we are no longer tied to negative emotions. Forgiveness is not a gift we give to others, it is a gift we give to ourselves, a gift of liberation. When we forgive, our hearts become lighter, no longer entangled in past wounds. Forgiveness breaks the chains that bind us to old pain and allows us to walk our spiritual path with greater peace. Beyond forgiving others, we must also learn to forgive ourselves. Many people find it easy to show compassion toward others but are incredibly harsh with themselves. We blame ourselves for past mistakes, torment ourselves over what we did or failed to do. But the truth is, we are all learning and growing. No one is born perfect, and no one has never made mistakes. If we constantly dwell in self-blame, we will never be able to move forward. We must understand that our past mistakes do not define who we are today. Every person has the capacity for change, and every moment is an opportunity to begin anew. In Buddhism, there is a story about a man burdened by his past who came to a Zen master and lamented that he could never forgive himself. The master asked him, "If you break a cup, can you glue it back together?" The man replied, "No, master." The Zen master smiled and said, "That is correct. The past is like a broken cup, it cannot be put back together. But you can pick up the pieces, look at them with compassion, and learn how to avoid breaking another cup in the future." The lesson here is that instead of drowning in self-blame, we can reflect on the past to learn and grow. When we accept ourselves with compassion, the past no longer becomes a chain that binds us. Loving ourselves does not mean indulging in our mistakes or justifying them, but rather understanding that we, too, are worthy of love and forgiveness. When we cultivate self-compassion, we no longer seek validation from the outside, nor do we allow the past to dictate our worth. Practicing self-love is also a part of mindfulness. When we truly live in the present moment, we realize that we are no longer the person we were yesterday. We are changing, evolving, and we have the right to move forward unburdened by the past. When we accept and love ourselves, it becomes easier to forgive others. When we cultivate compassion for ourselves, we naturally extend compassion to the world. And when we can truly forgive, we are truly free. So let the past be a part of the journey, a lesson that helps us grow rather than a chain that binds our spirit. When we learn to forgive and love ourselves, we find true peace within. No longer bound by the past, we can live freely and joyfully in the present moment. Life lessons are profound imprints that help us recognize the true nature of all things and phenomena. If we observe life with an awakened mind, we will see that every event, whether joy or suffering, is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world. In particular, when we reflect on the stories of the Buddha and the examples of great individuals throughout history, we realize that the journey of letting go is not an easy one, yet it is the only path to true liberation and peace. Throughout his life of teaching, the Buddha encountered numerous accusations and injustices, yet he always remained composed, without anger or resistance. One of the most well-known stories is the false accusation by a woman named Mara. Mara was a beautiful woman, but consumed by jealousy, she sought to defame the Buddha. Every day, she would appear near the Jita Grove monastery, pretending to be pregnant and spreading rumors that the Buddha was the father of her child. The public was in turmoil. Some believed her, while others were skeptical. As her deception escalated, she confronted the Buddha in front of the assembly, openly accusing him. Despite the allegations, the Buddha neither reacted with anger nor attempted to defend himself. Instead, he calmly responded, "The truth will reveal itself in time. Falsehood cannot endure, just as the moon cannot conceal the vastness of the sky." Indeed, not long after, the fabric she had wrapped around her belly fell apart, exposing her deceit. This story offers a profound lesson. When faced with slander or criticism, we do not need to rush to justify ourselves, nor should we harbor resentment. What others say about us does not define who we are, it merely reflects their own minds. The most important thing is not to chase after praise or fear condemnation, but to maintain inner stillness amidst all turmoil. In life, we are often misunderstood, spoken ill of, or wrongly accused. If we respond with anger, we only add to our own suffering. But if we maintain inner peace, we will not be swayed by the tides of gossip. This is one of the most essential lessons we can learn from the Buddha, the lesson of compassion and letting go. Not only in the Buddha's time but even in modern life, many people have overcome hardship by understanding the nature of impermanence and selflessness. There is a story of a man who once had everything: a successful career, a loving family. But one day, everything crumbled. He lost his job, his family fell apart, and his world seemed to collapse. For a long time, he drowned in despair, unable to accept reality. But one day, he turned to the Dharma. He studied the teachings on impermanence and dependent origination, realizing that everything in life arises and ceases. Nothing lasts forever, not even suffering. Gradually, he learned to let go, to live in the present, and to free himself from attachment to what had been lost. He began to rebuild his life not with clinging, but with a serene and open heart. In the end, he found peace within himself. Stories like this are not rare. Many have endured what seemed to be unbearable suffering, yet they all share a common realization: nothing is permanent. The past is gone, the future has not yet arrived, and the only thing we truly have is this present moment. When we understand this, we no longer cling to what has passed, nor do we worry excessively about what is yet to come. We live fully in the now, and that is the path to true liberation. Many fear letting go because they equate it with loss. But in truth, letting go is not losing, it is creating space for new possibilities. When we release the pain of the past, we can truly embrace the joys of the present. When we let go of attachment, we discover true freedom. Letting go does not mean forgetting, it means no longer allowing the past to control us. When we recall the past, we can see it as a lesson rather than a wound. When facing adversity, we can learn to accept rather than resist. On this journey, there are 3 important things to remember. 1. Recognizing our attachments. Often, we do not realize we are clinging to the past. Only by looking deeply into our own minds can we see the chains that bind us. This is the first step in letting go: awareness of what holds us back. 2. Practicing mindfulness to avoid being swept away by thoughts. Through mindfulness, we observe that all thoughts and emotions come and go, nothing is fixed. Understanding this, we cease to be trapped by the suffering created by our own minds. 3. Cultivating compassion and acceptance. When we have compassion for ourselves, we stop blaming ourselves for past mistakes. When we have compassion for others, we cease harboring resentment. And when we accept things as they are, we find true peace. Letting go is not something that happens overnight. It is a long journey requiring patience and mindfulness. But as we walk this path, we realize that beyond letting go lies freedom, peace, and liberation from all worldly burdens. Letting go of the past is a long journey, a transformation of the mind rather than a sudden decision. Some wounds do not heal immediately, and some pains do not disappear overnight. But if we understand their nature and cultivate the right practice, each passing day will bring greater lightness to our hearts, and we will find greater peace in what once tormented us. Looking back on this journey, we have explored why people cling to the past, why painful memories become burdens upon the heart, We have seen that the root of suffering does not lie in past events themselves but in our attachment to them. If we continue to view the past with regret, resentment, or guilt, these memories become chains that imprison us, preventing us from living fully in the present. But if we understand that everything is impermanent, that nothing lasts forever, that all things change, then we know that no pain is eternal. Whatever has happened, good or bad, is simply a part of the flow of causes and conditions, and in time, it too will fade. When we let go of attachment, when we no longer clutch onto suffering, the past naturally becomes light, and our hearts become free. More profoundly, when we realize the truth of selflessness, we see that even our own identity is a stream of changing conditions, not a fixed entity bound to the past. When we no longer identify ourselves with what has been, we are no longer controlled by it, nor do we allow it to define us. We are not our past mistakes, not our past wounds, not our regrets or grievances. We are transformation, evolution, and growth in each passing moment. Therefore, let us release the past not by forgetting or denying it, but by seeing it with wisdom and compassion. Let us regard all past experiences as valuable teachers, helping us to grow, to understand, and to love more deeply. Let the past be a guide, not a prison. Most importantly, let us remember that life truly exists only in this present moment. The present is the only reality we can touch, the only place where we can fully live. If we continue dwelling in old memories, allowing our minds to be trapped in the past, we will lose the life that is unfolding before us. Let the past drift away like a gentle breeze, let our hearts be vast like the boundless sky. Let go of what has been so that each new day is an opportunity to live, to love, to learn, and to truly be happy. When we release the past, we finally find true freedom.